This is Colin O'Keefe for LXBN TV, and today we're discussing allegations that Google's much talked about and much derided new privacy policy may violate a previous settlement with the FTC. To discuss it, my guest today is Boris Segalis, partner at Info Law Group and author on their excellent blog. Boris, first off, can you explain this settlement with the FTC? I understand it was over Google Buzz, and how this private group, the Electronic Privacy Information Center, alleges that Google violated it?
Sure, Colin, and thanks for having me on. A while ago, well, first of all, let's talk about Epic. Epic is a very well-known consumer advocacy group that advocates for privacy rights, and of course they have successfully called on FTC on multiple occasions to take enforcement actions with respect to privacy actions, with respect to privacy violations, including Google Buzz. So they pointed out to the FTC their concern with Google Buzz and played a key role in the FTC's decision to take on enforcement action. Now, if you, as many people recall, but not too many because it was a flop, obviously, Google Buzz was Google's first attempt at social network, putting together a social network. And what the FTC alleged, and many of us, I think, experienced, was that to create the social network, Google basically pulled your contacts into your connections, and there were a lot of complaints that recipients against whom people had restraining orders or information was confidential, or even the fact that the contacts were confidential for journalists or attorneys or married couples, I don't know, whatever was there made it into the social network. And that's what the FTC raised. That's what Epic raised to the FTC. And the FTC took on the enforcement action, and as a result of that, entered into a consent order with Google Buzz. And the main points there were that Google combined the information from, misused the information from Google Mail, where users submitted it just to get the service, but ended up on the social network without. So that was inconsistent with Google's privacy notice at the time. That's what was the allegation, that the privacy choices, and this is key, that the privacy choices that Google advertised, such as ways that people could decide not to participate in the network or make certain privacy selections, weren't effective, those which were the requirement for Google, because Google participates in the safe harbor framework for cross-border transfer of personal data from Europe. So one of the result was, of course, the standard prohibition against engaging in deceptive and unfair practices, but Google Buzz was also the first time that FTC mandated a privacy program. Usually in the FTC orders it was more focused on information security, but this time the focus on Google was a privacy program that required Google to have mechanisms in place that would prevent these sorts of things from happening in the future and would help Google build privacy into their products and understand the impact on privacy, impact of their future products on privacy. So that's what happened with Google Buzz.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was interesting because Google Buzz was that total flop, but people were finding out that you could see other people's contacts, and if you looked for it, you could find information that probably shouldn't be out, amongst the general public just by getting on a social network.
Right.
So what's Google's response to this? I know the implementation of these new privacy policies, where they pool your data together, is aimed at a better user experience, but what's their response to these allegations that they're going back and violating a previous settlement?
Well, let's take it a step back. What Epic is saying is that by announcing its changes and what Epic believes the changes to be to Google's current privacy practices, Google is violating and will violate its commitments, including the FTC consent order. In other words, Epic is saying that the type of practices that Google is announcing, such as combining, again, users' information into a single profile, is similar to what was done with Google Buzz, and is precisely the type of practice that Google could not engage into without giving users notice, choice, and explanation of their practices. And one of the main drive of Epic's complaint is that this combination will allow advertisers to more invasively and more comprehensively target individuals with advertising. That's one thing. And that by itself involves sharing data with advertisers, and it is a new and material change. That's the allegation to the practices, and that Google is just doing it without users' explicit consent, which Epic alleges was required, and that the process itself, the way the privacy notice is provided, the way it's articulated, there's nothing in the notice about the enhanced targeted advertising, for example.
Yeah.
The way it's articulated, the way it's brought up, is inconsistent with the requirement itself to have a privacy governance program, because the Epic's view is the purpose of this program was to prevent this exact type of events from happening, where this is an announcement, it sort of puts everything in rosy colors, this is just a change that's going to make everything better, enhance user experience, but in Epic's view, doesn't really disclose the substance of it, which is, it is Google, after all, is a profit-making enterprise. They're looking to monetize and leverage this information. I have to say, there's nothing wrong with that, right? I mean, this is what drives this business. But Epic's point is that it has to be done in a fair and transparent way. And in terms of safe harbor, again, they're bringing a point back to Europeans, although here the argument is kind of interesting that Epic is saying that it's just the fact that Europeans right now are questioning Google's compliance with the European data protection laws, that it somehow violates their safe harbor obligations. I don't buy that as a threshold argument even, but it's their job, obviously, as in the complaint, to push those boundaries. In terms of Google response, I mean, I can't say that there's been a lot of substantive response. I think that's probably reserved for the hearing, which is going to move forward. But I'm just reading off of some of the news sources. What they're saying is that they take privacy very seriously, and they're open to engaging in constructive conversations about privacy. Okay, they're keeping users' private information private. I don't really know what that means. They're not changing how personal information is shared outside of Google, and I think that Epic is taking an issue with that. And they've undertaken the most extensive notification effort in Google history to ensure that users have opportunity and time to opt out. Again, I mean, it is a statement, and it's not consistent with what Epic is alleging.
Yeah. And
that they also say that they've created a world-class privacy compliance program. Again, inconsistent with what Epic is saying. Now, Epic is not necessarily attacking Google this time. They're going after the FTC, trying to force the FTC to an enforcement action for violation of the Google Bus consent order.
Yeah.
Now, that's by itself is a novel theory, because I don't believe that FTC is obligated to take an enforcement action, but Epic takes a different view.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch, especially in terms of getting explicit permission from its users. I go on YouTube now or my Gmail, and it says Google's privacy policy is changing. This is a big deal, but not a big enough a deal for you just to check a box and say it's okay for you to scan my email and play relevant YouTube ads on a different site. It's a little bit iffy there, but you've touched on it a bit briefly. Going back on the safe harbor framework, can you, for those who don't know, can you explain just briefly what that is and then how this plays into that?
Sure. So the safe harbor framework is a mechanism that allows U.S. companies to receive personal information from Europe. As you may know, European Data Protection Directive and local laws that are based on that directive limit the ways personal information can be transferred outside of Europe. And there's a special arrangement with the United States where there's a safe harbor framework that consists of 7 privacy principles, and U.S. companies can subscribe to those privacy principles, such as notice, choice, security, and there's some others. And if they self-certify that they comply with those principles, they can receive information from Europe. That's a legal basis for receiving information. And Google is, in fact, certified to the safe harbor. So what Google is attesting to is that they, in fact, comply with those requirements, with the requirements of the safe harbor. 2 things about safe harbor that I think are key here. One is the notice principle, that the certified entity is obligated to disclose its privacy practices, and choice, meaning that whenever an entity shares users' information with third parties for those parties' own purposes, forget about service providers, it offers users an opportunity to opt out of those disclosures.
Yeah.
So this is something that Epic is saying didn't occur here. It didn't occur. The FTC agreed that it didn't occur with respect to Google Buzz, and the Epic complaint is basically saying that it probably didn't occur here. It's not a specific allegation because, again, it's based this time on European regulators' view that they want to take a deeper look at what Google is doing. I think that this whole drive in the allegation is that Google is not being forthcoming about the changes. So it's hard to know what the changes are. I think some of the stuff is conjecture. And to get quickly to your point about clicking boxes, there's a balance to it. I think that having an integrated experience definitely brings a lot of value to users and brings a lot of value to Google. Not consumer advocacy organizations, they have their agenda, obviously, but what they do is not necessarily always good for consumers. Mm-hmm. It has to be a balance, but I think there's a drive, and it's both from the FTC side and from everyone's side, for more transparency and fairness in how information is used. So that's probably Epic's goal.
Yeah, it's very interesting to watch. It's something that Google has tried to make very prominent. I mean, no matter how many times I click dismiss, I still see that notice everywhere I go. So, they are doing as much as they can to let people know that there are changes that are coming. So it'll be interesting to watch going forward.
It'll be very interesting to see how it develops because, again, I think this is the first time that I know of where a privacy organization is trying to compel FTC to take action. So we'll see how that works. I mean, that's probably one of the most interesting aspects of it.
Yeah, we'll have to see where it goes. Once again, that's Boris Segalis, partner at InfoLog Group. For more on this story and other great, they have great privacy and data security content over there, tons of great stuff. Be sure to go to infologgroup.com. And for more, we have tons of great publications on the privacy and data security channel at LXBN. Be sure to visit lxbn.lexblog.com. Thanks, Boris.
Thanks so much, Colin.